So all of us are interested in growing in every area of our life, and it's inevitable as part of that process. Before long, we hit the wall and we start feeling stuck. What can we do to start growing again in each of these areas?
For 25 years, I've been studying this question: why do intelligent people get stuck on a plateau, whether it is in their personal life or in their work? And it all boils down to the Peter principle that we all rise to a level of incompetence. So unless we're doing something to sharpen our competencies in each area of our life, we're going to get stuck. What got you here can't take you there. It's very, very simple. There are 9 areas which come from very ancient philosophy that govern every single aspect of our life. And unless there is progress in all these 9 areas simultaneously, in balance, there is no way in which you can experience acceleration of results, experience joy, fulfillment, and happiness. At the end of the day, unless there's energy that's flowing, there's no way in which you can sustain the effort that you put in, the actions that you need to take for the results that you want to achieve.
It's really interesting. So you said there's 9 areas only in our life, and if we master those 9 areas, we're well on our way to having a successful life. I'm interested to know, what are the common mistakes that you see people making that go across all of these 9 areas?
If you look at a table has 4 legs. And unless these 4 legs are in balance, the table just does not perform as a table. What most people do is they go after 1 or 2 or 3 areas which are of paramount importance to them. For example, earn more money. For example, grow their fame. For example, enjoy their relationships. But the other areas have a huge impact on the balance in their life. Now, the balance needs to be understood from the point of view of energy. The energies need to be in perfect harmony and perfect balance for people to be able to take the actions that they need to take, and each area helps and supports the other areas, that when there's a depletion in energy in one of the areas, the other area steps in, and it's like a flow. And that nourishing flow is what empowers people to take consistent action, robust action, to produce the results that they are looking for. And these results lead to success which is manifest in the outward world, and the experience of success in the inside. And unless there's a balance between the two, it's not sustainable.
So I'm interested in digging into some of these specific areas, and I think money is something that's important to everybody, no matter what you do in the world. So I'm interested in understanding the relationship that we have with money. Everybody talks about it, that it seems to be a key part of how much money we attract into our life. Where does our relationship with money get formed?
Our relationship with money gets formed in early childhood. We are surrounded by so many things that are happening relating to money in our family. For example, an uncle gyps our father out of his rightful share, and he's frustrated and angry, and there are all these conversations that are unfolding around the dining table, and we are privy to it, and we understand half of it, and there's all that emotion that's boiling up inside us, emotions of anger, of frustration, of helplessness. And it's all kind of getting entangled with this thing called money. So money has a charge, and that charge is negative with all these things that happen. There are also positive moments when in a family we experience a lot of joy when money comes in. There are, windfalls that happen. But on balance, the happy moments are soon forgotten. But it is these sad moments that stay with us deep inside, and sooner or later, the relationship with money boils down to the default for most human beings is this: money is bad and money is sad. As we grow older, our friends treat us to maybe a nice lunch or take us out for a wonderful evening. When it's time for us to reciprocate, we don't have enough money and there's embarrassment that's there around. So all through life, all these kind of occurrences consolidate that feeling. With that as a root feeling deep inside us, the law of attraction works against us. So there is a repelling motion that happens, and people don't realize that even when they earn a lot of money and money lands in their bank, they find very legitimate ways of giving that money away, throwing it away. They buy expensive things, take very fabulous holidays, and sooner or later they're back to square one and they wonder, what happened? And they can't figure it out that the negative charge inside them is the one that compels them to get, quote unquote, rid of that money.
Yeah, I'm curious that you have successful entrepreneurs who had nothing when they were children, and that creates a drive in them to go out into the world and, earn money and get some level of success. So that drive helps them to some degree because they're acquiring money, but is that actually limiting the level of success they can have because it comes from a negative relationship with money in their childhood?
It's a very interesting question. So what this negative charge of that money is bad and sad does for most people is that it creates a drivenness. And that drivenness just gets people going to do things, action after action, project after project, deal after deal, to keep getting more and more and more money. And as they start accumulating money, they don't have the space to really enjoy it and experience joy and happiness that goes with money. So they become accumulators of money and they experience scarcity irrespective of how much money they have. So on balance, it's really not about how much money you have or you don't have. On balance, the question really boils down to, do you have freedom in the area of money? Are you free when you have money? Are you free when you don't have money? And unless there's freedom in the area of money, this whole notion of joy in life is always going to remain elusive. When you have money, you want more. When you don't have money, so it's a kind of a question which doesn't have an answer. The question here is to look at the dynamic of money and what is our experience, what is our relationship with money. And if our relationship with money really, really boils down to that money is bad and sad, then perhaps we need to do something to gain freedom from that. Because when we gain freedom in that area, then suddenly there's a surplus of everything. There's a surplus, there's an ease with which money comes into our life, an ease with which it stays with us, and an ease with which we enjoy what money can do for us.
So I think a lot of people have this view that when they acquire a certain amount of money, then the rest of their life will start working, and perhaps the other 8 areas of their life will all come into alignment and they'll experience that joy that you spoke about. Is that a reality, or are they lying to themselves?
The problem with most human beings is that they live in a phenomena called one day. That one day my life will work out. And they set some benchmarks, whether it's the quantum of money that they have in their bank, or it's the turnover that they're looking for, or the size of the company, or the size of the house, or whatever it is. So there's a story that they build around that when I have that, then I'm successful, I've arrived. And one day that's going to happen, and they keep living in that one day phenomena, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, but one day never arrives. Till one fine day, it's too late and it's time to go, leave the world, still waiting for that one day. So the question really here is, how do you stop, how do you get off this one day train? And if you can get off this one day train, what are the dynamics of life? How would it just unfold? And the answer to that is that these 9 areas, when you start focusing on each of them, and you start working on these 9 areas, this one day phenomena leaves its grip on you and you start enjoying life in the here and now, and a surplus of results, a surplus of happiness, a surplus of joy becomes available to you, which at the end of the day is your birthright.
So our relationship with money seems to be the key to attracting more income and becoming more wealthy. Can you share some stories of the transformations that you've seen in people's lives when they've cleared up their relationship with money?
Many years back, there was a participant in Basecamp who shared that as a child he was playing hide and seek in his ancestral house. That evening there was a big commotion because one of his aunts, was very distraught that a 5 rupee note was missing from her dressing table. And 5 rupees is something like 25 fills. And everybody was called and asked, "Did you take the money? Did you take the money?" And this young lad was called and he was questioned and grilled. And he was extremely scared and he was very, very distraught by that question. And he said no, and then everybody was sort of pointing fingers at him because he was the guy who was hiding in that room. Turns out that the next day they found the 5 rupee note behind the dresser, but the deep impact that incident had left in his whole psyche basically formed his entire relationship with money for the rest of his life. And he had grown a company with 200 people. He was very, very successful, but he never had money. He didn't have money to pay them salaries on time and so on and so forth. So when we completed that whole relationship with money through an exercise, and the release that he got, it was very cleansing for him. It was very cathartic for him. And it just looks like a 25 fills kind of event, just 5 rupees. But the impact held him back. And then there was no looking back for him. He grew his company and then he was able to exit. And then from there, he's gone on to great things in life just by transforming his relationship with money. That 5 rupee note was holding him back in creating wealth.
So one thing that I've really enjoyed from knowing you and working with you is the fact that actually we don't need to do more, we can do less. And that seems to be something that applies across the 9 areas. Can you share something about that with us?
When things are aligned, there's very little effort that's required to accomplish anything. If you look at a door, it probably weighs anywhere between 200 to 300 kilos. When the hinges are properly aligned, a small child can push it open. So when the hinges in all these 9 areas are perfectly aligned, with a little effort, we can make things happen. Things just start to work. We don't look at these 9 areas very carefully to find what is out of alignment. Instead of that, we're very happy pushing and shoving a door where the hinges are not aligned, and somehow or the other making things happen, and that becomes our pattern, and we get used to it. And that's called getting used to so much mediocrity in our life, when effortless is an option, and we can really work with an effortless way of making things happen if we just pause and take stock of these 9 areas and find the pieces that are out of alignment and align them. And once that happens, results just start to flow.
I like what you said, that there's just 9 areas for us to focus on, and when we focus on the small areas that create alignment, then everything just flows naturally and life becomes effortless. So how did you uncover which specific areas we should focus on?
When you take your car to a garage, and if I take my car to the garage, maybe pistons in your car, in the engine are not working. Maybe the brakes in my car are not working. A good mechanic is going to scan through every area of your car to find out what needs to be aligned. So you always approach these 9 areas from creative skepticism. And creative skepticism is really about the state of checking very carefully what may be out of alignment. And when you approach it from that space, you will find things that need to be aligned in every area. Maybe some are very easy, some are a little difficult, low-hanging fruit, mid-hanging fruit, high-hanging fruit, but you will get your answers if you just run through and scan through these 9 areas. So the question really here is, it's not which area, the question is examining all of the areas and finding what needs to be set right in each of the areas so that they support each other, and in a balanced way, the vehicle called life gets underway, just like your car. As long as the engine is aligned, in its tune, it has enough oil, as long as the brakes are working and everything else, your car works brilliantly and effortlessly.
So do we need to find what those areas are for us individually, or are there some commonalities in each of the areas that apply to everybody?
Life has been observed, analyzed, researched over thousands of years. There are many models that have been created over the years, and a lot of these models have been tested, checked. The ones that have survived over time, over thousands of years, are the ones that give us the clues on how we can look at our life. And these 9 areas fit everybody. And that's the beauty of looking at our life from these 9 areas, because it's like saying there are 9 buckets, and every single area of your life you can put into these buckets and there's nothing left over. And that's the beauty of working with these 9 areas. Because if you address these 9 areas, every single aspect of your life is guaranteed automatically handled.
So we live in a day and age with social media where any of us can become an influencer or a minor celebrity. With that comes some pitfalls and some consequences. Can you share your thoughts on that?
So as we go through life, we interact with people in different communities. And in each of the communities that we interact with people, we create value. And we create value based on what we say and what we do. And as long as there's consistency in what we say and what we do, and we deliver on what we say, there is a reputation that gets born. And that reputation over time becomes our personal brand. Our personal brand is usually, it's just left on its own. It's not cultivated. It's like, mushrooms that grow in the backyard, and there's a lot of rubble around it, and there's no clarity. And therefore, the power that can emanate from a personal brand just doesn't happen. So when we start working on cultivating our personal brand, we will start noticing things that are consistent with who we are as human beings, what we care for, our values, our purpose in this life, and things that are not consistent. So the things that are consistent allow us to produce the results that we want, the success that we want. And things that are not consistent hold us back. And that's where the struggle comes in, and that's where all the effort comes in. So the idea is for us to take stock of our brand, look at the dimensions, the 6 dimensions that create our personal brand, that form a personal brand, and look at how everything is aligned with each other. And once that alignment comes, there's a kind of acceleration that takes place, an effortlessness that takes place in every single community that we operate. Because when we are coming from a brand which is cultivated, what we say and what we do becomes consistent with our personal brand, and it starts to grow. And as our personal brand starts to grow, people want to do business with us, people want to share their life with us, and that's the source of happiness and success in an effortless way.
So many people, when we think brand, we hear the word empathy. It's a buzzword that everybody has heard, but I think a lot of us struggle to understand exactly what empathy is. How do you define empathy?
To distinguish empathy, we need to look at what is apathy and what is sympathy. So apathy is really about being concerned about our own wants, needs, desires, values, goals, etc. And there seems to be a common kind of understanding that if I have my vision, mission, values that appeal to me sorted, that's going to then help me succeed in life. But if you really pause and think, do your customers care about your values or do they care about their values? And if you as a supplier of a product or service are focused on your customers' values and what they care about, then chances are they want to do business with you. So apathy in this context is being more focused about your values and your vision and your mission and your passions and your desires as a supplier, where the customer really doesn't care. Sympathy is about getting aligned to the suffering of other people. And there are two kinds of people who operate from sympathy. One are people who want to ride the wave of sympathy and start posting all kinds of things on social media and talking about a cause because they want to earn some brownie points, and their brand is based on that kind of sympathy. And it doesn't do any great things. It's just like, they get their 2 minutes to talk about something, to get onto the soapbox and proclaim their support and solidarity with what's happening. And the other kind of people who operate from real sympathy are people who go and do things to support people when they are in trouble without wanting to show to the world that they went out and did things for people. Now, those people operate from the space called empathy. Empathy is really caring about other people. Empathy is about providing to other people what they want and need. And if you really look at the physics of this equation, if you care for and provide what your customers want and need, they will want to do business with you and your business will start to grow. So empathy is about caring for other people. Apathy is about caring for yourself. And sympathy, largely put today, is about shouting from the treetops about things that happen to other people so that you show up in life as a good person. But, it's an empty kind of a pursuit. It doesn't do anything great for your personal brand.
So relationships are at the heart of everything that we do. How do most people approach relationships in your experience?
If I have to use one word, I would call it transactional. And it's very, very unfortunate. But at the root and the heart of relationships today is, everybody has an agenda, they have goals and time pressure to get things done. So their approach to all the relationships is transactional. That's really not a relationship. And a relationship has continuity to it. There's goodwill that's built in it. And unless there's goodwill, people will not want to do things for you to support you more than they have to. So it's now become a trading culture in a relationship. I owe you one. You do one thing for me, I owe you one, and that's it. And then we're quits. That's not really a relationship. The fundamental of relationships is the quality of affinity that exists between people. And the higher the level of affinity, the higher the space you have to communicate with each other, and the faster you can arrive at agreements. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of all communication, is to arrive at agreements. Whether that agreement is a sale or an agreement is where to go to eat for dinner or what to buy or what holiday to take, it's all about the art of creating consensus and creating agreements, and the ease with which you can create agreements through the communication between yourself and other people really makes you a great leader. And a great leader, the starting point for great leadership is affinity. And people are not necessarily focusing on affinity. Without a powerful focus on affinity and looking at what is the level of affinity that they are operating from, the only way in which they can produce results is by applying pressure, by manipulation, by holding back, by telling people that unless you do this, you're not going to get that. And it's all kind of transactional. I see that with parents and children. I see that with executives. I see that with the boss and their subordinates. I see that all around, where just by working on affinity and bringing that level to a space of harmony, there's so much that can get accomplished with discretionary effort that starts to show up. So relationship and the quality of relationship is measured in terms of what is the discretionary effort that you command from the people around you. And if you in turn are also willing to put in discretionary effort for other people, then what goes around comes around. And there's an effortlessness in how you can achieve the results that you want with the people that you interact with as you start improving your relationships.
So you said that affinity is the key to all of our relationships. What is the DNA of affinity?
So affinity is defined as the distance between people. And the distance in terms of liking, affection, respect, all of these get combined in this space called affinity. And affinity has a whole range. At the highest level is serenity, which we experience with our favorite relatives, for example. And then there's conservatism, and there's friendliness, and all of these. And then there seems to be a line. And then below the line are things like boredom, being fearful, apathy, so on and so forth. So depending on the level of affinity that exists between you and somebody else, to that extent the other person is predisposed to help and support you. Now I've seen, for example, at an airport where we had already missed the deadline for checking in, there was a person who comes and, instead of building rapport with the counter staff, starts going into his command, booming voice, "Who's your boss? I want to see him." And instead of, saying, "Hey, brother, can you help me? I just really need to get onto this flight." But he's not willing to even consider the first step of creating that agreement and creating that discretionary effort that this person. So all I had to do was wait for the drama to get over, and then this guy huffed and puffed and walked off. And I just turned on to the counter staff and say, "You know what, I don't care whether you put me on the flight or not, but brother, I want to say thank you for having to bear the brunt of people like us, who once come late, and two, we get onto this high horse." And this guy looks left and right. He said, "Okay, brother, give me your passport," and then I'm on that flight.
Brilliant.
Yeah, and it wasn't manipulative at all. I was just kind of coming, and he got me. He got my energy. He felt that I was coming from empathy, empathizing with his world.
So one thing I've noticed with you is you have many relationships that last 10 years plus, and in some cases you may not be in contact with that person, and you seem to pick up exactly where you left off, and there is that level of affection and love, I would call it. So what is the secret to creating these deep relationships that even when you don't nurture them, they just pick up exactly where you left them?
I like to believe that it's caring and concern about how I can help and support the other person. And every time I meet someone, the question that is there in my mind and what I ask them is, what can I do for you and how can I help and support you? And I get genuine joy and pleasure in doing that and serving people. So it creates this kind of goodwill that lasts over time and distance. It doesn't matter how long it has been since we meet, because there's nothing manipulative about our relationship. So I haven't left the person with the feeling of being cheated or, of feeling kind of that there's a fake person who's saying all these sugary things because he wants to. Because I'm very straight with them. I'll say things which I believe are, that they really need to examine. And sometimes these are not pleasant to hear, but they all get it that I'm there to serve them. They feel served. And I think that's really the basis of this. And I got this way of being, observing my father. My father was loved and respected by people because he was always there to help and support. He was very selfless. If somebody needed to get an admission, he would be there at 5 o'clock in the morning to go with the family, stand in the queue, cheer them, make sure that the process went through. And what did he get from it? What did he expect? Nothing. It was just that it was so important for him. Education was very important for him. So all the things that were important for him, he took that kind of step to work with people. And that's kind of the environment in which I've grown. And that's really, so all these friendships that I have, a large part of that goes to the way of being that my father demonstrated in every day of his life.
So I've heard you talk a lot about favourite relative positioning when it comes to our relationships. What is favourite relative positioning?
Each one of us has a favorite relative. It's either a father, a mother, grandfather, grandmother, uncle, aunt, whoever. And these people all have a few things in common. First of all, they have our best interest at heart. They never make us wrong. They're very loving, they're very nurturing, they're very caring, they're very kind. And in return, we seem to listen to everything that they have to say. They have the maximum influence on us. So if we start modeling our favorite relatives and start doing the things that they do, and we show up in all our relationships as people who are nurturing, caring, loving, never make them wrong, are supportive, then we earn the same power in these relationships to talk straight to them and make things happen. Because unless there is that huge bank balance of love, of affection, of caring, of commitment, nobody's going to respond. So I tell people the best way for you to be an effective leader is to look at your favorite relatives and start modeling them. It's not written in the books. It's not written in theories. This is an experience. It's the presence of that leadership in your life. And the highest quality of leadership that you've ever experienced is the leadership from your favorite relatives. Start modeling them and you see the magic happen. It's so simple.
So I'm seeing the difference here between transactional relationships and the type of relationships you can have when you adopt this favorite relative positioning.
Yes.
When I hear the word transactional relationships, networking comes to mind.
Yes.
And this is something that's important to any business person, but a lot of people don't get many results from networking. In your experience, what are the common mistakes that we're making?
There's only one mistake that people make in networking. When you go out to network, fundamentally networking is about growing your business or growing a project that you have, and you want help, you want support, you want information, and you want knowledge. And all of that is going to come from one fundamental equation, that people like to support or people like to do business or people like to be around people whom they know, like, and trust. Now, if you look at this equation of people who know you, like you, and trust you, the know part is the easiest of the lot. Because in today's day and age, it's very easy for people to come to know you. You can use social media, digital marketing, print your cards, hand it out to people. Now they know you. The other part is trust you. So either you're trustworthy or you're not. It's black and white. And that's again in your hands on how trustworthy you are. Because if you're not trustworthy, end of story. There's nobody around who wants to work with you or do business with you. So the third part, which is like, nobody seems to focus on. Now, nobody is working on likability. So if you create on a scale of 0 to 10 a likability index and today plot what is your average likability in how you show up, what is your overall affinity level, how you show up with people, and then you start working on improving that likability, then the moment your likability goes 8, 9 on 10, everything that you want from networking just starts flowing to you. So networking and likability, these are correlated. Whatever you do, if the likability index is low, no technique is going to work. And there are so many things people say or prescribe you to do. But at the heart of networking, the engine of networking is likability. And there's not too many things people are doing on likability. Because to do things on likability, you need to transform yourself. And that's not easy. And you're not going to be able to attempt transforming likability unless first you take that up as, I want to work on my likability. The moment you take that on, things will start to work.
So I've noticed a commonality with many successful people that they all seem to exercise and they refer to it as the hour of power. Why do you think all of these successful people are so focused on exercise?
Well, whether it's meditation or exercise or diet or fitness, everybody's searching for power to produce results. Now, power comes from many, many different sources. But the most effective way of gaining immense power is to really look at the past, the present, and the future. And where all human beings seem to be caught up, that they are caught in the regret of the past and anxiety of the future, and between these two, they don't seem to have the present. And power can only show up in the present. If you don't have powerful access to the present, there is no way in which you can really bring to bear all your gifts and your capabilities and your competence to make breakthrough growths happen month after month after month. So the process is very simple. It's a process where you spend time in completing your past and putting the past where it belongs, which is in the past. And what do we have in the past? We have a bunch of upsets, of disappointments, of frustrations and helplessness and all that kind of stuff that has happened through the years. And whilst all those events have gone in the past, the cumulative feelings around all of these disconnects and disruptions that happen remain in the present, and we seem to have what is called a leaky bucket. So in the morning you wake up with a full bucket of energy, and within a couple of hours, half of that energy is drained away, and it's drained away without us even realizing that these things from the past are draining it away. It's like some silent files that are operating. Like if you have a mobile phone, I was reading the other day that if there are lots of apps that consume power, even though you never use them because they're constantly syncing. So these kind of things, these apps of the past are draining you constantly of energy. So if you can take time off, put the past where it belongs in the past, then you clean up your present and you access power. In Basecamp, this is what we do. We enable people to take stock and put the past where it belongs. This is like saying there are 3 different filing cabinets: the past, the present, and the future. So the files of the past need to be put in this filing cabinet called the past, because if those files are open on your desk in the present, how are you going to even tackle all the files in the present which are now they are buried or they are lost somewhere? So put these files there, put the files of the future and the future anxiety in the future cabinet. Now you have a clean table and you start working, and that clean table, the access to the clean table is power. And that power helps you to get things done.
So you mentioned that when we let the past control our present, that it drains energy, and you said that it's like having a leaky bucket. I've also heard you talk about how we drain energy from other people. Can you share some of your thoughts on that with us?
Being a leaky bucket, we want energy, and we want quick fixes. So the only way in which you can quickly generate energy is by sucking energy from people around you. And it turns out that there are 4 different ways in which people suck energy from people around them. The first is the way of the intimidator, that when you intimidate people and they get scared and they are fearful, they pass the energy to you. And it's like you are sticking a straw into them and sucking energy like Dracula. And that kind of comes to you. The second way in which you show up, or most people show up, is the way of the interrogator, where you ask a bunch of questions, you're needling, you're questioning, you're putting them off balance, and that's the way they give up their energy and their helplessness in your presence. You start receiving that energy, and there's a top-up that's taking place for you. The third way is the way of the aloof, where you just withdraw and people are trying to reach you or talk to you or communicate with you, and you stonewall them. And that silence or that withdrawal, you start sucking energy, because they are now destabilized and they're wondering how to make things work again. And the last or the fourth way is that of a whiner, that you keep whining, and as you keep whining, you suck energy from people. And it's quite strange that an intimidator will always produce a whiner in their space, and an interrogator will always produce an aloof in their space, and that's the pairing. Now, these are the 4 different ways in which we steal energy from people. It's not very effective, but this is the default, and there's a way in which we can complete this way of stealing energy. This is like 4 jails that we are in, and at Basecamp we create a jailbreak for people, that they are able to examine and explore their jails and figure out how they got into the jail in the first place, complete that, let that go, resolve that, and then they're free to come out of their jail and then be able to provide energy to other people as opposed to steal energy from people.
What I think is quite refreshing for people is how simple all of this is. So we've all read the books and been to the seminars, and we're drowning in information, yet we're starving for wisdom, is the phrase that's often used. So I've heard you talk about the difference between concepts and distinctions, and that seems to be the key of simplifying everything. Can you just share some thoughts with us on that?
Well, there are 2 different domains. The first domain is a domain called knowledge, and the other domain is a domain called wisdom. In knowledge, we ask questions, we want to understand, we analyze, and ultimately we gain a concept, or we get a conceptual understanding of whatever we are pursuing to grapple with or to understand. Now, the unfortunate thing about concepts is that concepts do not enable us. And there seems to be an endless drive for conceptual knowledge. It seems to start from not knowing something, and in that phase of not knowing, there is a fog, or there is this state of uneasiness or unpleasantness. And our drive is to move away from that unpleasant state to a pleasant state. And the moment we understand the concept, now we are out of that fog. And we are in this pleasant space called, aha, now I understand. And then that seems to then end our entire search. And now we got the concept. We are free from the doubt and the anxiety of not knowing. We've understood it, we've analyzed it, but the concept does not enable us. On the other hand, there's a domain called wisdom. And in wisdom, we start grappling with whatever it is that we are working with. And as we start grappling, we start synthesizing as opposed to analyzing, and we start to get it as opposed to understand. And then what we get is a distinction. That distinction enables us and stays with us for the rest of our life. The process of wisdom is a rough ride because you need to figure it out. For example, when you're learning how to cycle, it's a rough ride. You fall off, you wobble, you're unsteady, you're unsure, there's anxiety, all of that stuff happens. And as you keep grappling and grappling and grappling, in one instant, you get the distinction, balance. Now that remains with you for the rest of your life because that's got embedded in your domain called wisdom. Whereas in the domain called knowledge, it's a smooth ride. You ask questions and, somebody explains the stuff to you, here are the steps. What you end up with is the recipe. Now the recipe, is great. You got so many recipes. Now I know so many recipes of how to do so many things. I even know the recipe of how to make an aeroplane. I know the recipe of how to fly from here to the moon. I know all these recipes at a conceptual level, but it doesn't enable me to do any of these things. But in the domain of wisdom, where I've grappled and grappled and grappled with something, I've mastered the distinctions. Those distinctions enable me to do things. Basecamp unfolds in the domain of wisdom. There's a technology with which we work, and this technology is something absolutely amazing. When I discovered it, I devoted my life to it. Because in the shortest possible time, I can work with people in this domain of wisdom, and they can gather in 2 days the distinctions that they would perhaps take 20 years to gather. Because there is a question, how long does it take a man to catch fish? So the answer is, it depends where he's sitting and how many fish are there. Now that's the wrong answer, because that answer is the answer to a question called, how long does he need to wait to catch fish? The answer to the question, how long he needs to catch fish, is an instant. The moment the fish bites the bait, he's caught it. Maybe he waits for 1 week, or for 1 hour, or for 1 minute, doesn't really matter. The waiting period is immaterial. He catches the fish in the moment the fish bites the bait. So how long does it take for you to get a distinction? You can get a distinction in an instant. Just like in an instant, you got the distinction balance. How long do you need to wait to get a distinction? It can be 20 years. So what I've done is I've gathered all the basic distinctions in the 9 areas of life that we need, and people are able to grapple with these key distinctions in these 2 days and get them one by one by one by one. Just the way as if I take you and put you in a boat, and the boat is in a small lake which has got thousands and thousands of fish. You put your bait out, you'll get it. So what happens now? The answer to both the questions remains the same. How long do you need to wait to catch a fish? Instant. How long do you need to catch the fish? Instant. Why? Because there are so many fish there. So Basecamp is full of distinctions. There are distinctions fired at you at rapid gunfire speed, and you will get them one after the other, and they will all stay with you for the rest of your life. And that's the beauty of Basecamp, and that's why I'm devoted to it.
So I think all of us are interested in What is the distinction in the area of business that can really help us accelerate our business growth?
For that, you need to go to the father of business management, Peter Drucker. Peter Drucker says that the purpose of business is to create a customer. The purpose of business is to serve your customers. Now, if you start really serving your customers, operating from empathy, caring about what they want, what they need, what are the unmet needs, and creating all your innovations based on those unmet needs, the chances of success just skyrocket. As opposed to working with, competitive advantage and competition and being totally preoccupied by defeating competition or what are they doing. It's great to know what they're doing, that's fine. But unless you focus on serving your customers, there's no way in which your business can succeed. So it's a very short answer. It's simple. People make it too complicated. Business is not complicated. Business is simple. There are two things. People like to do business with people who they know, like, and trust. Work on your likability, work on your trust, and work on people knowing you. Three things. And on the other side, work on serving your customers and their needs. And you're done. And as long as you're constantly working on these things, constantly, and aligning, and you start creating value between what you say and what you do, your business is sure to succeed.
So you said that the customer has to know us, and that's easy in the modern world with ad campaigns and social media. They have to like us and trust us. But the interesting point you made was about creating value for that customer. How do we create more value for our customers?
First of all, we need to understand what is value and what is value creation. There are so many different ways of describing this, but in physics it's very simple. Value is a gap between the current state and the after state. So your customer wants to buy your product or service because he wants to go from his current state to the after state. And if he is able to traverse from the current state to the after state in a very elegant way, trouble-free way, and if that distance is significant, the gap is significant, then he experiences that you created value for him. If the gap is small or fuzzy, then he does not experience that you created value for him. And unless you create value for him, the likability, the trust, nothing is going to exist. So it's all really about calibrating into what is the current state of your customer, what is the after state that is looking for, and then looking at your business to see where the gaps are and what do you need to do to make sure that that gap between the current state and the after state is very clear, very powerful, and easy for the customer to perceive, because unless he perceives that, he's not going to act. There's no point having hidden stuff, and there's no point about sugarcoating stuff. There's no point about telling them that there is so much value that you create when actually you end up creating so small. So advertising seems to be today like dynamite. Everybody talks about dynamite. My product is dynamite. My the value that I create for you is dynamite. Everything is dynamite. But when you really get down to it and you really check, it's a very small fuse between the current state and the after state. So what's the point of so much dynamite that you talk about with such a small fuse which is never going to grow? Nothing's going to happen. There's no bang at all.
So how do we figure out where our competition offers value and where we offer value? Because I'm guessing to create value, we need to go beyond the rest of our competition.
So one of the ways in which you can look at competition is not in comparing what you're offering to what your competition is offering. The best way to study competition is to look at it as a system between your target audience and the competition. And as your target audience is interacting with the competition, there are some desired effects that are happening, and that's why your competition is in business. But there are also undesired effects, because every system creates desired effects and undesired effects. And if you carefully analyze, if you carefully gather all these undesired effects that your target audience is experiencing with your competition, and these are all chronic, they're living with it, they're living with that mediocrity. If you gather all of those and then start engineering your products and services to meet, match, and surpass all these undesired effects, now you have a product and a service which is distinct from what your competition is offering. And then once you present that to your customers in a very elegant way, without making your competition wrong, just go out there and say, hey, listen, we have this product and service for you, and these are the 7 things that we have identified, which are of value to you. Why don't you try our product and service? Let's talk. Chances are that the target audience will want to switch from your competition to you. So if you take your competitor head on, feature for feature, you're going to end up with a Me Too product or service. And a Me Too product or service will never get you far. But if you start looking at what are the undesired effects that your target audience is experiencing with your competitors, and gather all of those and then create innovations to solve all those chronic undesired effects, the customers will switch. And that's the way to work with this whole competitive advantage thing.
So we've been talking a lot about relationships and business, yes, and the kind of cross-section between them. So I'm interested, whether we're executives or managers, we have people that work for us, and to achieve anything in our life, we need to create results through other people. How do most people approach getting their team to do what they want?
What seems to come naturally for most leaders and most people is convincing. So they start the process by convincing their team to take on the targets, take on the goals, take on the actions to make things happen. But convincing as a distinction does not produce long-lasting results. Because convincing has in its makeup things like hidden agenda, manipulation. Because you want them to do things, but you're not sharing the whole picture with them. And you're kind of selling them something to do, and often, you use things like threats or inducements or bribes in whatever way, shape, or form, and you might call them incentives. At the end of the day, it's a bribe. So with all of that, you get results. I mean, the whole world works on that, and we get results. But the question is there a better way? And there is a better way, and it's called enrolling people. And the whole distinction enrolling is what we unfold in Basecamp. In fact, the 2 days operate in this whole domain of enrolling. And as you go through Basecamp, the art and science of enrolling starts getting embedded in you. And you are then able to start enrolling people by declaring your agenda, by being transparent, and that fosters trust and longevity. So when somebody is enrolled, they stay enrolled. When you convince somebody, you got to keep ensuring that they're convinced. It's too much work. And they keep slipping off. And they offer excuses and justifications and reasons, but an enrolled person stays the course. There's discretionary effort. They make things happen. One of the greatest enrollers that the world has ever known is Mahatma Gandhi. So in this movie by Sir Richard Attenborough, Sir Ben Kingsley essays the role of Mahatma Gandhi to perfection. If you were to watch that movie and just absorb how he conducts himself in all these difficult situations, you will see a master enroller in his prime. And as you start observing, a lot of his ways will start embedding in you. And then you come to Basecamp. And in Basecamp, you will work with enrolling till you get a way about you which helps you to enroll people, to touch, move, and inspire them so that they get into action. And what you will find in your teams is discretionary effort. Effort which by definition you cannot buy, you cannot induce, you cannot bribe, you cannot employ fear, nothing. Then it's not discretionary. Discretionary effort is voluntary, discretionary. And discretionary effort leads to a breakthrough in success. So enrolling and discretionary effort and breakthrough in success all go together.
So I think many people watching this are interested in leaving behind a legacy or having an impact on the world. But how do we assess how big the impact we're currently having in the world is?
So each one of us operates in different layers in our life. The first layer is we ourselves as an individual. Then we operate at the next level, or the next layer is in a family. The next layer after that is a community, and the next layer after that is a society. Now, family is also our family as well as the group of people that we work with very closely. Now, when all of these get aligned, there's an acceleration of results that takes place. So, for example, out of the 9 areas that we work with in Basecamp, fame sits at the society level as an example, networking sits at the community level, and so on and so forth. So these 9 are distributed in these 4 nested games that when they get aligned, there's a very powerful surge of results that starts to show up.
So of all your programs, Basecamp is the most extensive. You've had 40,000 plus people over 25 years. And Basecamp was always a premium program, but you recently made the decision to make it free. What's the idea behind that?
The greatest teacher in my life was my father. He's the one who lit this lamp deep inside me, the lamp to learn and grow and, always keep sort of supporting people in learning and growing. On his 25th death anniversary, I took on this mission of impacting 1 million lives who will never know my name. And when these lives are impacted, it's a message from my father to them, and they don't even know me. And this is the way that I've chosen to celebrate his life. So by offering Basecamp free to leaders who can impact at least 200 lives, they would help me to achieve this mission in the next few years. Because Basecamp enables them to produce results and produce results that are very, very powerful. And the way I like to look at it is that every single leader impacts the life of a 6-year-old girl in some remote village in some country who's wearing a pink frock with pink ribbons, with a bright smile on her face, skipping and dancing all the way to school because a fee has been paid, because there's electricity in the house, there's enough food to eat, and they're living a life of dignity because money is flowing to that remote household, because the breadwinner is working for this leader, and this leader is providing that opportunity. So this mission is really about how can we protect the smile of that 6-year-old girl, and this impact of 1 million lives is dedicated to protecting the smile of that 6-year-old in the fond memory of my father.
So if people are watching this and they're resonating with what you just said, how can they contribute to that mission in some way?
Now, there are several ways in which people can contribute. Number one is identify leaders around you. They can be community leaders, they can be business leaders, people who have the power and the capability of impacting at least 200 lives. And talk to them, share with them this possibility of Basecamp. And they will have a natural resistance to coming to something that's free, because obviously there's some question in their mind, why is something offered free? What's the angle, what's the twist behind it? There is no twist, there is no angle. We're not going to sell anything, there's no upsell, there's no pressure. This is a process of celebrating what they are doing and what they're providing to the societies and the communities in their own pursuit of earning their own, wealth and money and income for their families. They are in fact ending up supporting more than 200 lives. And we are celebrating what they're doing in a very beautiful way. And when they go back from Basecamp, they will find an acceleration of results that takes place. And through that acceleration of results, they will be able to impact more lives. And as this starts happening, the ripple effect of this starting to happen will help me to accelerate impacting this 1 million lives of people who never know my name.
So you said that Basecamp is for leaders who impact 200 lives on average. How do we calculate the number of lives that we impact?
So let's take an example of a business owner who's running a mid-sized company, has got, let's say, 20 employees. These 20 employees have got 10 family members. That makes 200. Somebody has 10 employees. These 10 employees with 10 make it 100, and then there are suppliers and customers and so on and so forth. So it is the level at which you are showing up. As a leader, are you, conducting yourself, whether it's a business or in a community, where you're impacting, the few people who have dependents. When you add all of that up, it's 200 lives that you're impacting. It's not about having 200 employees. No, that's not what this is about.
So Rajesh, what do you hope people will be left with after attending Basecamp?
When they come in, they will get an opportunity to articulate their personal brand. And they spend 2 days going through the whole cleansing process in which Basecamp unfolds. And at the end, they're left with their personal brand manifesto, which they create based on the learnings in Basecamp. And that personal brand manifesto becomes what they take out from Basecamp and start to activate in their life. And then after Basecamp, we offer a complimentary Basecamp and Action webinar, which is spread over 10 weeks, a weekly webinar that will help them to activate each aspect of what they learned in Basecamp, so that all these 9 areas get activated in their life. So Basecamp provides what they need to activate, and the Basecamp and Action webinar will help them to activate it and embed it in their life, so that at the end of that process, their whole life is transformed. There is a huge breakthrough in how they show up in their communities, in their society, the value that they create, and the plateau effect that they are facing in the different areas of their life. All of that disappears and vanishes, and they start living a fulfilled life, a happy life, feeling and experiencing being whole, complete, and joyous. And when that feeling starts to come for them, that's the moment of the gift directly from my Father to them.
Fantastic. Thank you for talking with me today.
Thank you.